to the UIAAA Connection podcast. GoFan and VNN are proud to be the exclusive sponsor of the UIAAA Connection. Now a combined company, GoFan and VNN provide a seamless integration for digital ticketing and athletic websites. Direct your fans to one place for all your athletic events, communications, and tickets to home and away games. Thank you to GoFan and VNN for their exclusive sponsorship of the UIAAA Connection.
Welcome back to another edition of the UIAAA Connection. I'm your host, Mark Hutch Hunter. Today we have as our special guest, Alex Huxford, Certified Athletic Administrator, the Director of Athletics at Grantsville High School. Welcome to the podcast, Alex.
Thank you, Hutch. Nice to be here.
Let's have you begin by sharing with our international audience where you grew up, where you went to college, your first job, etc.
Well, my parents are both from Seattle, so I was born in Seattle. I don't really remember living there, but shortly after that, my family moved to Oregon. So I grew up in Salem, Oregon, and I went to CAA High School in Salem, Oregon, where I played football, basketball, and ran track. Then shortly after that, I kind of left and to go to college and other things. And I never lived in Oregon again as an adult. I've lived my adult life in either Idaho or Utah. But it was a great place to grow up. It's that part of the state in Oregon where Salem has really turned into a big city. And it wasn't quite that way. We kind of lived on the outskirts of town, so it was a little more, it was quieter back then, but I don't hardly recognize it when I do go back. But it was a nice place to grow up.
It's right. I'm just checking my fifth grade knowledge. It's the capital of Oregon.
Yeah, you're correct. Yeah, your geography is good. Yeah, so
how far from Corvallis and how far from Eugene?
So it's right in the middle of the Willamette Valley. So it's about it's right in the middle of Portland and Eugene. So about 50 miles south of Portland and about 50 or 60 miles south of Eugene. And then Corvallis is about 20 miles west of Salem.
Okay. Didn't mean to interrupt you, so continue.
No, you're fine. You're fine. And it's interesting that you say that too, because that's a big deal in Oregon is, are you an Oregon or Oregon State fan? And as you can see, I have an Oregon flag up there. So I guess that answers that question. But
it does.
We had, Corvallis High School was in the region that we played in. So I'm, was very familiar with, Corvallis and that area. It's a big rival. They called it the Civil War. I think they still do call it the Civil War, here in Utah, you have to get used to the BYU-Utah rivalry, right? And the things that associated there. So it's different and it's great. I loved it. But then after that, I went to, I actually attended Ricks College for a year when it was called Ricks College. So I'm showing my age a little bit. It's BYU, Idaho. And then I served a 2-year mission for my church. And then I came back and went to Southern Utah University, where I graduated in 1995 with a degree in physical education and a teaching minor in English with a coaching emphasis. And so my idea was really to go into teaching and coaching. SUU was a great place to go to school. Dr. Lunt is kind of famous for, producing these, they used to call it the coaching factory. I don't think they call it that.
They still do. Well, that's in my year, that's what they called it. And as far as I know, they still call it that. So continue.
Right. And so, I developed a rapport with him and he was a great mentor for me. I really enjoyed my time there. But what happened though is that I married a girl from Rigby, Idaho, and I actually finished my student teaching in December, and we I had an opportunity to take a job in January at a middle school in Idaho Falls. And it's pretty
Okay.
rare, especially back then, that you would come right out of, student teaching and there'd be a job available in January. So
Mm-hmm.
I went up there and took a full-time position and ended up staying in the Bonneville School District for 13 years. So I was at middle school for 3 years, and then I was at Bonneville High School for 10 years. And then after
Okay.
that, my wife and I had the opportunity to move back to Southern Utah, where we spent another 7 or 8 years in Cedar City. And then we moved to Stansbury. And now I still live in Stansbury, but now I'm the athletic director here. So that's kind of, in a nutshell, kind of my journey.
Did you teach then when you were moved back to so did you teach at Cedar or did you teach at Canyon View?
I taught at Canyon View. So I was hired at Canyon View to be the head football coach, and I was teaching English. Actually, I'm a PE major, but all of my jobs in education have mostly been in English education because, when they find
Okay.
out, well, you can coach and teach English, that's kind of maybe a little bit of a rare thing. And it's easier to
Mm-hmm.
get English jobs, and everyone needs English teachers. And I actually really enjoy teaching in the classroom. And so has worked out pretty well. But yeah, I was an English teacher and the football coach there for 5 years. And before that, I was the head football coach at Bonneville High School for 5 years. So, and before that, I was just, an assistant coach, kind of working my way up the ranks, and coached football, basketball, and track. So I've coached all three of those.
What then brought you from Canyon View to Stansbury?
Well, um, so my dad lives in St. George, and my mother-in-law lives in Rigby, Idaho. And we just felt like it was maybe time for a change. And my wife had a desire to get a little closer to her mother, who she had just lost her father. And so
Mm-hmm.
we, what we did is we kind of settled on Stansbury. We kind of split the difference. And it's not too far to get to the Idaho Falls Rigby area, and it's not too far to get to Cedar City and St. George either. So we kind of split the difference. And the other connection I have is I'm good friends with Trever Wilson, the athletic director at Stansbury High
Right.
School. And so when he knew that I was looking for someplace else to go, he reached out to me. One thing led to another, and I ended up at Stansbury. So this is, I don't know if you know this or not, Hutch, but Trever and I coached together at Bonneville High School 25 years ago.
I did not know
And,
that.
and so we were the we coached JV football, JV basketball, and track for probably 5 years together. And so the two of us spent a lot of time together, and we became really good friends, and we still are good friends. We kind of went our separate ways for a few years, and now, of course, he's the athletic director and has been a great mentor to me as I've been trying to, attempting to settle into this job.
Well, then let's talk about that. I know its question was further down, but obviously Trevor then got you involved in the UIAAA, got you involved as being certified when you were there at Stansbury. Now, of course, you've gone to Grantsville inside the district. So, talk about how all that came about.
Well, that is a great question, and Trevor was really probably the most instrumental person in making sure that I went through the certification process. And it began with just casual dialogue, and I was asking him about his job and how that all happened and everything. And then he started talking to me about the certification process, and so he invited me to come to one of the classes at the state office in September, I think, a few years ago. And so
Hmm.
I went and took one of the courses, and then I took another one, and then I took another. And pretty soon, I was really close to having those 5 core courses done, and I had taken a couple of others because I had also attended the state conference and I had taken a couple classes online. And then it was not last April, but the April before, I felt like I was prepared and studied, and I took the CAA exam and passed that exam, and then became a certified athletic administrator, which I'm really proud of, actually, because I would say, Hutch, that's probably the first real test in 25 or 30 years I've ever taken. And,
Yes.
and it's not it, it's you have to know your stuff, and I studied, and it was I was sweating it a little bit, but I'm really proud of it. Just like I was proud of the degree I got at SUU, and then I got a master's degree from Idaho State when I first started teaching and coaching. And I'm proud of those academic accomplishments, and I think it means something. And I think that Trever really kind of drove home the importance of being certified and taking those courses, because there are things that you need to know. Of course, we all know that you learn a lot on the job, that the practical way of learning is really the best way to learn. But some of those things, those law classes, and those things that you learn along the way, are really instrumental to the day-to-day application of this job. And I'm so glad that I did it. I know of other guys who are athletic directors now trying to get their certification, and I'm just grateful that I had the opportunity to do it the other way around, and that worked out for me. And Trever just said he just let me know that it's really important. It's a big deal. And I know that Trevor's very involved at the state and even at the national level. And so, and he's one of those guys that I can just pick up the phone and I can call him, and he can just, help me with anything I need help with, because this is my first year. And you know what? I do need help. And he's been a great resource to me. Other people have as well. But anyway, that's kind of my journey and how I became certified. And I'm really glad that I did, and I'm proud of it. It's a good thing.
And you should be. Just to mention, for those that are listening in our audience, because it was, for me, 1997, back when there was only 6 or 7 CAAs in the state of Utah. And
Oh, wow.
and of course the review for it's not as, we don't have as great a review as we have now, but I can just remember sweating for the test. I think everybody sweats for that test.
Yeah.
But I think I think the pass rate is really high. We haven't had very many that have not passed it in Utah. But I appreciate your comments about certification, and I'm shout out to Trever, who's as you mentioned, our professional development coordinator for the UIAAA, and is, of course, well connected nationally. But you had the advantage of becoming a CAA, so I assume you obviously helped Trever in his day-to-day job, because there was more than just you at Stansbury that he got to take some of those classes. So I think that's a great thing. Talk about that for a moment.
Yeah, that's right. There's another guy that worked there. His name's Colton Mickelson. Colton and I coached football together there, and he was a teacher there, and he kind of got both of us involved. And to the point that and when I had the opportunity, and when Trever needed help, he would often call on either Colton or I to help him. And, with whether it be, supervision with a game, help with some scheduling issues, those kind of things. So it wasn't really an official thing, but I was kind of his pseudo assistant athletic director. And so I kind of got a feel for the things he did on a day-to-day basis, and then the things that he did after school, which of course are really significant. And so I had some opportunities to, there were, especially in the spring when it gets so busy, and I wasn't coaching a spring sport. And so Trever would just kind of give me an assignment and say, hey, would it be all right if you covered this? Could you go do this? Could you cover this? And we worked it out with our administration, and it was nice to have that opportunity to go. And so I was able to help him do that. And Colton did as well. Colton actually took that test with me at the same time. We went down to that conference and took the test at the same time. And so it was kind of fun. I remember on the way down, he was driving and I had a kind of a study sheet, that study sheet,
Right.
The test, and I was quizzing him on the way down, and so we had a good time, and I really enjoyed the conference, and I'm looking forward to it again this year. And oh, by the way, and I am going to the national conference this year for the first time.
That's awesome. So did you get Catham ponied up some funds and it's going to send your guys
Yeah.
in
Well,
the district?
actually, I got the scholarship or the I don't know. You apply. There's a grant that I applied for.
The UIAAA grant.
Yeah,
Because you've never been to the National
because
Perfect
I've
yet.
never been there before. Right.
Because
And
we
so,
started that probably 10 years ago, and that's probably one of the best things we've ever done. Because once we get you to a national, everybody wants to go back.
yeah, and that's what I've
Yeah.
heard. And Trevor's been talking about it for years. He always will tell me about it when he comes home, and so I'm really looking forward to that. So I am going this year. I'm looking forward to that, and then going in the spring again, and then just kind of learning more about this new kind of career switch that I've done a little bit, and how to best navigate this job, which is there's a lot to it. And so I think all of those things will help, and I appreciate the opportunity.
Well, talk about the Grantsville people that outside the state of Utah. They're a lower classification school, but in my time uh, with the UIAAA, I think maybe you're the fourth or the fifth AD that I've known that's been at Grantsville. And so
Yeah.
talk
So
about Grantsville and the history there and the success they've had.
well, I know the two previous ADs. One of them actually works here in the building, and he's just still a teacher. And I think it was just kind of time for him maybe to go back to that. He had some kids involved in athletics that he wanted to be involved in their coaching. But one of the things that I've really knew about Grantsville before I accepted the job is that there's a rich athletic tradition here. That there is there are a lot of good programs, and the community really supports athletics, and so it's fun to be in an environment like that. It's not, I mean, it's they're smaller towns, but it's kind of where I've come from. I still live in Stansbury, but it's not far, where it's still the same school district, but it is down a classification. So I've been used to coaching in the 4A and 5A classifications. Right. And so now this is in 3A, and it's been fun to get to see what the just the differences in classifications, meet new people. And then what's really nice is that I feel like in just about every sport we have a chance. I mean, we have a chance. I interviewed a coach for one of our head coaching positions, and he was either going to stay at a very middle of the road, or even bottom tier 4A school, or he had the opportunity to come here. And I said, and what I said to him is, I said, hey, look, of course you do what you want. We're offering you the job, but you want to grind it out there, year after year, or do you want to come to a place that can legitimately compete for championships every year? And that's what we have here. We have the kids, we have the infrastructure, we have the coaches, we have the support, community support, and that's what I feel like it is here in Grantsville. So it's exciting to be part of that.
Excellent. Let's have you talk for a minute about some of the mentors and teachers and leaders that you've had in your life that have made a difference for you.
Right. Well, let me put my glasses on for a second. I took a couple of notes on that, and I remember from, I can't remember a time that I didn't really want to be anything other than a high school football coach and a teacher. My high school football coach was, between my junior and senior year, was diagnosed with cancer, and he had to step down from coaching, um, and passed away a year and a half after that. And he was probably the guy that I looked at him and I said, that's what I want. That's who I want to be. Someone like that. So his name was Roy Thompson, and he had coached football in the state of Oregon for 30 years. My high school English teacher was very influential on my life as well. His name was Mr. Cooley, and I remember him. College is so much about writing and knowing how to write, and I felt like I really learned a lot from him. Other mentors that I've had, guys that I coached with when young and early in my career. I coached football and basketball at Bonneville High School for 10 years. And Tim Hooton was our head basketball coach. And I literally was his JV basketball coach for 10 years. We coached together and we won a state championship. We'd gone to the state tournament many times. And I just learned a lot about coaching and life from him. There's a guy I coach football with there named Denny Edwards, who was a kind of a legendary coach there that coached for a long time. And he was one of my assistants. He was older than me, and he kind of helped mentor me. And he had been a head coach. I had never been a head coach. And he kind of helped me through the process of going from being an assistant to a head coach. So those guys I'm really grateful for. In life, I would say my greatest mentor is probably my father. He's 84 years old now, and he lives in St. George, and he plays golf as much as he can. And he's just, I think he was just the ideal father for me. He was very supportive. He never overdid it, with sports. He just kind of was one of those guys that would go sit at the top row of the bleachers and watch the game. And after the game, win or lose, he'd just tell me that he was proud of me, and that he really liked to watch me play. He never criticized. And, I learned a lot from that. So there's a lot of people who have been influential in my career over my life. I don't know if you know Jim Langford at Alta.
I know him well.
So Jim and I, when I was hired as the football coach, he was the basketball coach at Canyon View. And, even though Jim's a little younger than me, and not by much, but he's a little younger than me, he was such a great mentor to me because I was coming, from another state. And I kind of, school districts are all different. Everybody runs their programs a little differently. And he was so instrumental in acclimatizing me to the Iron County School District and how they did things. And then I helped him with basketball, and he helped me with football. He was a basketball coach at Canyon View, but I'll tell you what Jim was really good at. He was one heck of an offensive line coach. And he played offensive line at SUU. And that's kind of was his bread and butter, I thought. And anyway, we're still really good friends. And Jim has been another one of those guys as the athletic director at Alta now that I can call anytime I need to. And he's always willing to help. So those are just, I've had many mentors and people that have influenced my life, but those are just a few.
Thanks for sharing that. Let me ask you a little bit of a personal question here, Alex. What's your biggest failure or disappointment in life, and what did you learn from it?
Well, I read this question and I thought about it. And then I thought, well, should I give? So I decided that I'm going to give you the tough one,
Okay.
the honest one. So When I moved to Cedar City, I had so I moved from Idaho Falls, and I don't know, I had been the head football coach, and I was pretty young, and we were pretty average. But the last year I was there, we won a region title. And then we went to the lost in the quarterfinals of the playoffs, but we had won a region title. And this job in Southern Utah came available. So I thought I'd go to Canyon View. Well, that was back in the days when Canyon View was 4A and Region 9. So you had to play St. George schools. And that is when Hurricane was really good, if you can
Yep.
remember that. Though that's when I took the Canyon View job. Well, that job humbled me because I thought that I could go down there and win there and just wave a magic wand and things would happen. And it really didn't turn out that way. And it was, although I loved living there and it was a great place to be, the coaching part of it was really hard and it beat me down. And so for after 5 years and not being very successful at all, I stepped down as the coach. And I just, I considered it to be a failure. I had failed as a coach. And I thought, I just didn't, I just didn't feel like I could go on anymore. And that it spilled over into my personal life and things happened and I completely got out of coaching for a while until I moved back to Stansbury. And you know what? Talking like I felt like I was a failure, like I was the biggest failure, and like I couldn't do this. Well, what I learned from it is that I had another opportunity. I didn't know if I'd ever coach again or even if I wanted to. When I moved to Stansbury, I'd been there a couple of years, and Eric Alder was hired to be the head football coach. He's now the coach at Skyview. And he was coaching at Ben Lomond, and he didn't have a lot of wins and success at Ben Lomond either, as far as wins and losses go. Well, one thing led to another. We were introduced, and pretty soon he hired me to be his defensive coordinator. And so 5 years, Eric and I coached Stansbury football team. And so he ran the offense and I ran the defense. And it was just to not be the head coach and just have one side of the ball and just to take care of that was really refreshing. And all of a sudden, we were just winning games. We won almost 50 games in 5 years together. There were 2 years we were in 5A. I don't know if you remember that we went to the
Right.
state semifinals and lost to Lehigh both times in the state semifinals.
I remember you played Olympus because my grandson at the time, who's now what, 22, I think they had a playoff game out there
Yep.
back in
Yeah,
those
that
times.
playoff game is what got us to the semifinals, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. That against Olympus, and they were a good team, and that was a good win for us. But I was Eric and I coached together and developed this great coaching relationship. And of course, we became very good friends. And I remember just talking to him one time, and we're standing there at Rice Eccles Stadium, and I'm looking up at everything, just soaking it in. And I thought, when I was coaching at Canyon View, I came here one time to watch the state playoffs. And I thought to myself, I am so far from getting to this game. I will never get to this game. And then all of a sudden, and then a few years later, I get there in a different capacity, of course. And Eric said the same thing. And so, these two guys who were kind of down on their luck in coaching, well, me more than him, really. And it just, I thought maybe I'd never coach again. And then I had the opportunity to be there. And I just remember how grateful I was. And I was like, you know what? I am just going to soak this in, because just being here, I thought I would never get here. I was so far away from that. And now to have this other opportunity, that's what I learned from it, is that even though, I felt like I had failed, and I don't know, maybe I was never meant to be a head coach. Maybe I was, there's a lot of things that I can learn from it. But you know what? I just tried again. I got knocked down and I got up and I tried again. And, although we didn't win it all, we had a lot of success. And those 5 years that I had at Stansbury coaching with Eric Alder were the best 5 years of coaching I ever had.
That's well said. Thank you for sharing that. Let's talk about athletic administration. I realize you've only been at Grantsville for a year, but obviously you really got into administration helping Trever. So since you started helping Trever to where you are, how have you seen any changes in athletic administration? How has it changed?
Well, since I think that since I've noticed working with Trever is I feel like ADs are more like building administrators. Is like it's kind of a catch-all job. Like I get asked to do things by administrators all the time as if I am one of them, one of the actual building administrators. Now, I know some other districts do it differently. For example, in Iron County, one of their assistant principals is also the administrator over athletics. Right. So he's the AD, and people organize it a little differently, but my job is just the athletic director. That's my job here. But there's a lot of administrative things, and I think that more and more of those things are maybe being heaped onto us. But that's what I would say. And how it's changed since I've been here in the first few months is that I would say, well, I think I'm getting a little better at it. I hope so.
Sure.
I'm trying to figure it out. I felt a little bit like a fish out of water at first. But now I've been through one season, right? One full season, the fall season. And I was like, okay, right. All right, that's how you do that. And that's how you do that. So I think I've learned a lot and I continue to learn. So, I can't give you the best answer for that. Cause like I said, I'm really new in the profession.
Well, what's the favorite part of your job, Alex?
I think the favorite part of my job is people. That's the part of the job that I like. Just the people that I've gotten to know and the people that I work with. Like, when when people say, hey, so-and-so wants to talk to you, there's a parent that needs to come in and talk to you. I enjoy that, even if I know that they're coming in with maybe, and it might be something that they're upset about is, I enjoy the interaction with people that I have, and then getting to know the other coaches and mentoring younger coaches and working with coaches that maybe there's a lot of coaches now that don't work in the schools like they used to.
Mm-hmm.
And so maybe helping them understand how schools work a little bit. This is how we operate in the school. These are how things work, and working with them. And then, of course, working with the student athletes too. I think people is my favorite part of the job. I think that paperwork and clerical work is my least favorite part. I know it's part of the job. It just seems really cumbersome at times, and I know that it's important. I know that it has to be done. And I think that that's part of the job I'm not very good at, but I'm getting better at. The people part of the job, I think, comes pretty natural.
Good. Let's finish up with a couple of questions. The first being this, Alex, and I realize you're brand new in the profession, but if you had two suggestions for a brand new director of athletics and they had to follow Alex's suggestions in order to become successful, what would your two suggestions be?
So I actually thought about this for a while and I wrote them down. And number one, I would say don't be afraid to ask for help. And I've listened to some of your other podcasts, Hutch, and a lot of people
Hmm.
say that. And I think they say that because it's true. Um, and I was talking to Catham, who also has been a great mentor to me. He's our
Right.
district athletic director. And I had a question for Catham, and I felt like I had given somebody some bad advice. And so I was feeling bad about it. And he said, well, you know what? Just pick up the phone and call the state office. And and I've done that before, but I'm like, yeah, but I feel like, oh, they're going to get tired of hearing from me, kind of thing. And you know what? They're really not. Kurt, who answers the phone, is so great every time, when I call. But there are a
Hmm.
couple of times when, and he just said, if you ever, even if there's a sliver of doubt, and you're not sure on a policy, when it comes to eligibility or something like that, he said, call me, call the state office, don't ever be afraid to ask for help. And I've really felt like that's the difference between athletic administrators and coaches, right? Coaches are kind of reluctant to share with each other, can be
You're so
reluctant to
right.
share. And what I found is that athletic directors, well, they'll share anything. And there's kind of this community amongst athletic directors where I feel like other ADs want to help me succeed. And that's very liberating. It's nice to know that that's there. It's available. And I guess the other thing would be that I said, and I think this is just not as being to suggestions to a new AD, but not just to an AD, but to anybody. I've always tried to do this as an adult, and I haven't been perfect, but apologize when you make a mistake. And because I've made some mistakes in this job so far, and I've just had to go to a couple of coaches or some people and just say, hey, look, I'm sorry. I was wrong about that. I made a mistake, but I'm going to make it right. And when you do that, if you try and make an excuse for why you made a mistake, I think people can see through that. But I think if you just comes right out and apologize and own it and say, look, I made a mistake, but I'm going to fix it. So those are the two things I would say is don't be afraid to ask for help and apologize when you've made a mistake.
Great suggestions. Thanks so much for sharing. We'll finish with this. Alex, what question should I have asked you that I failed to ask you?
Okay, so I thought about this one as well, Hutch. So,
Okay.
um, so this is what I think is really interesting, and I've talked to people about this. We've all seen an evolution um, in education-based athletics, right? We've seen things change, right? So my question would be, is where do you see high school athletics in 10, even 15 or 20 years from now?
Okay, then answer that question for us because I'm
Yeah.
obviously retired. You may be retired by then, but where do you see it in a decade, 15 to 20 years from now?
Yeah, 5 or 6 more years, right? And
Hmm.
but so I see one of the things that I see is that these especially at bigger schools, I think I see these club sports coming in, like AAU basketball, club volleyball, club softball, all this stuff becoming really big to the point where sometimes I wonder, and I'm not saying I want this to happen, but I've asked people this. I said, do you think that there will be a shift and maybe that those will become the where the higher level athletes go and that high school athletics will become more like, I mean, I don't know, I don't want this to happen, I hope you don't, but high school athletics would be more
Right.
like like intramurals kind of thing.
Well, you
Uh,
bring up a valid point because I worked with some administrators, and of course, I've been gone from Jordan now for 12 years.
Mhm.
But there were some administrators, even back then in the district office, that for whatever reason, they had a bad experience as a youth or they see things differently as an adult, were in favor of getting the athletics out of high school and into that type of thing. I myself think that's dangerous, but let me let you continue.
Yeah, and I do too. I think it's so unique. I don't know if you've ever been with someone at an event who's been from a different, like someone from England or Europe that has been to a high school sporting activity, like a high school basketball game, and they're like, "Wow, this is incredible. We have nothing like this in our country." And I think that we just assume that this happens everywhere. Well, it doesn't. Most places in the world, education-based athletics and high school athletics doesn't happen like the way that we have it. And high school athletics meant so much to me growing up as a kid. That's it. It's, it was everything, and my coaches and my friends and the relationships that I made and the things that I learned from both winning and losing. I just don't know if you can ever replace it. And I don't want it ever to be replaced. But sometimes I feel like these other entities coming in, and they're trying to, it makes me a little nervous. Of course, I don't want things to change, but
Right.
what's, I hope I hope it doesn't, and that those things don't take priority over high school athletics. I don't know if I've articulated that correctly, but that's kind of how I feel.
Yeah. And I think that's well said. Something for all of us to think about on that note. That wraps up this edition of the UIAAA Connection. Again, our special guest today has been Alex Huxford, Certified Athletic Administrator, the Director of Athletics at Grantsville High School. Alex, thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Thank you, Hutch.
For our listeners, we hope you tune in again next week for another edition of the UIAAA Connection.